Welcome to Metaphysical Soul Speak. I'm your host, Elena Fox Starks. Hey guys, I hope that you're doing well whenever and wherever you are when you hear this particular pre-recorded message, this podcast. It's come to my attention that in July, not last month, 2 months ago, in July, NASA was unable to detect an asteroid, a massive asteroid that was hurtling 55,000 miles an hour towards Earth. They didn't see it. They just missed it. It came within 48,000 miles of our planet, which is pretty damned close as far as space debris, as far as space is. It could have gotten trapped in our upper atmosphere or pulled in by our gravity, and that just would have been all she wrote, Charlie. That would have been the end, right? Or possible. Could have been something. There's been a lot of fireballs exploding all over the planet. I was watching a YouTube video on this NASA goof and their failure to see it coming. And, someone said that there was a fireball over Chile today. I looked up reports and I couldn't see anything yet, but we'll see in the next few weeks as things get translated into English. Maybe, it'll come to light that that's true. I don't have a reason to not believe the person, but sometimes people put random things on websites, especially YouTube. They say random things. But someone else said that NASA means in Hebrew to deceive. And I wanted to look it up, so I looked it up, and it actually means, if you're going to use the masculine singular form of the word Nasar, it says this man on Quora answered a question about, does NASA actually mean to deceive? And he said it actually means he lifted up. So pretty interesting, because what does NASA do but lift men up off of the Earth into the outer atmosphere, onto the moon, and someday onto Mars. So I thought that was very interesting. Then I started thinking, what does NASA mean in a whole bunch of different languages? And maybe perhaps someday I will figure it out. I found out, though, that in North Korea, they decided to start their own version of NASA, and they're using a very similar logo to the United States NASA. But do they call it NASA? No. They call it NADA, N-A-D-A, or nada, which literally means nothing in Spanish. So I thought that was weird. I've always heard that NASA does stand for never a straight answer. So we'll see what they have to say, if they're going to even address the fact that they completely missed this asteroid that almost, wiped us all out. But as you know from my pendulum dowsing session the other day, we were told by the prime creator that we're not going to be wiped out by an asteroid or meteor or whatever, bolide. That will probably have a lot of near misses, or actually near hits. If it's a near miss, it's a hit. So there's that. I want you guys to stop vaping if you are, especially if you're trying to vape THC-based products. 805 people have been brought in with lung diseases into the emergency rooms in the past few months. 12 people have died from this already in the United States. I don't know what's going on with it, and that's why my CBD oil company that I have a little business in, they have completely stopped all vaping products. They just felt like it's just too scary, too dangerous now. It's funny because I actually have a vape pen here in my room that I put CBD oil in, and I actually got high from it because I think there was some THC mixed in with it, but it tasted terrible, so I didn't do it too often. And I have asthma anyway, and I thought, well, that's a better way to do it. But you know what? I don't know really what's going on. I think that the alveoli, which is the tiniest little branches that pull in the last bit of oxygen in your lungs, I think that it's been collapsing the alveoli. And it's not just one type of vape pen. It's not just one type of THC cartridge. It's across the board, all of them. And something is happening to people where this is becoming a very big danger very fast. So I'm just going to encourage you, just stop vaping. As fun as it is, looking like a douchebag with all that vape around your head, you know, it was one of my most favorite things to do. And now I'm thinking I don't really want to do it anymore. It's too many teenagers have been brought in and died, or, you know, almost died. And it's scary. So I'm just going to tell you right now, you know what? Go back to cigarettes. I'm just kidding. Don't go back to cigarettes. I'm kidding. Don't do that. If you must light a cigarette in honor of your ancestors, like I do sometimes, since I am Native, and I do call upon my ancestors and I offer the sacrifice of tobacco for them to help me and to honor their memory, I will take one drag and then I will just burn the rest like incense. You know, it's not necessary to smoke the tobacco if you do use it as a ceremonial thing, such as a peace pipe or an honor for your ancestors. But yeah, it's just scary out there. A lot of states are suddenly putting 3 to 4 month bans just to see until they can sort it out. Some of them are just saying, forget it. There is no more flavored vape can ever be sold here in this state. Many states, like 46 states. It wasn't just one or two people or a group of people at one party. I mean, literally across 46 states in the United States, people have been brought into the hospital from vaping, and there's not one singular source where we could go, haha, it's that brand, you know? So I just, you know, it was fun while it lasted, right? And I mean, I still, when I think about vaping, I think about the douchebaggery character that Johnny Depp created in American Tourist, and the way he just sat there vaping constantly. I mean, for me, that was one of the most hilarious quirks he added to any one of his characters. Well, that and the one in Mexico where he had an extra rubber arm, which was hilarious. I don't know if you guys ever saw that movie, but I think I saw it when I was in Peru. But I mean, I don't know. There's just something about it. And he kind of made it like douchebaggery, but also very hilarious, and also very, it just made me want to do it. So I had to go get a vape right after that because he influenced me. And it was so fun, and making smoke rings and not actually harming my lungs. And I was like, oh yeah, you know. And any time I ever vaped, I never did it with nicotine. And I did try it with CBD oil just to see what it would be like. And it did relax me, but I don't know. I kind of felt like maybe it wasn't the best for my lungs, and I just automatically stopped like a year ago. And I just wanted to bring it up again. I did bring it up like I think a week or so ago, and oh my God, you guys, it just hurts my heart to think that like young kids are just like being so sick and dying from this, you know? And I know that a lot of people with the increasing strains, the more and more strong strains of marijuana as they come out, and more THC, people are becoming more sensitive to THC. They're becoming like allergic to it. So that's something to watch out for. Just make sure you don't have THC sensitivity. And if you do, just kind of lay off the weed for a while until your body can get back to normal and regulate itself a little bit. My oldest was so pissed off because he got to California where it's legal to smoke, and then he's like, oh my God, after like just a couple months, he was like, I have THC sensitivity and I can't do it anymore. And I'm so bummed. Like, this is the saddest day ever, the day that he realized that. And, you know, I'm just like, oh, that is like so sad. You know, because it's one of these natural things that God created. But as people keep growing and modifying the plants and making the strains stronger and stronger, it's not the way God intended anymore. And it's like a frankenberry, no, frankenfood. And it's alive. It's alive. You know, it's just so scary. You know, how just pure THC is a scary, scary thing when that's all it is. I mean, about a year ago, I met somebody who gave me a pure THC capsule. And she said this was all the THC taken out of the strongest strain of marijuana she could find here. And she said she likes taking it once in a while. And she has, I mean, seriously, Willie Nelson, Snoop Dogg, she's up there with those guys as far as smoking weed and the highest strains and the highest everything. And she handed me this pill and I was scared to take it, and I didn't take it for like maybe a month or two. And when I did, I felt like that movie on Netflix called Lucy, where the woman is falling apart and her body is coming back into its original molecular state where she breaks apart. That's what I felt was happening to my body. I was so scared. I sat there for 4.5 hours crying because I knew any moment my kids were going to come into the room and see the molecules in my body just floating in space in my room. I 100% believed that's what was happening. I mean, it wasn't actually happening, obviously, but that's what I honestly believed while I was on it. It was one of the singular most scary, horrific experiences of my drug-induced life, okay? Not that I've had a drug-induced life. I've only been attempting or trying new things in that arena only for the past 4 years. You know, weed has always been a part of my life since I was 17. But like this brave new world approach I've had in the past 4 years about trying this and that and the other thing, just to understand, it's actually as a shaman, as an energy shaman that I am, it's given me a great deal of insight and perception into the different drugs and why people take them, why people are doing them. I haven't tried all drugs. I've never tried meth. I don't want to do crystal meth like ever. But I accidentally smoked crack because in Bogota, they have people, the drug dealers will sell a joint of marijuana, or they'll sell a joint of marijuana that also is laced with crack, right? So sometimes, you know, the dealer is high and he forgets what pocket he put what in. So you'll buy like a normal joint and you end up with crack and you're like, dude, this is too weird. I don't understand why anyone would ever want to do that drug. I've done it accidentally and it was horrible. And I was like, it was like you're all relaxed and peaceful, and then all of a sudden you're like, zzz, 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 like it's like you're on speed. And it's like the opposite energy of marijuana, and why would you ever want to do that? It was counterproductive, and it was a very horrible combination, let alone vibration. And it really makes me feel for the people that do crack and then get hooked, because it's such a low vibration. And it's kind of like the vibration of fear to me. And ironically, when I did try Coke, it was the opposite. I felt euphoria and wonderful. And I used all of my energy to release a crap ton of negative energy from the city of Bogota. I released a massive amount of trapped negative energy that had been trapped in the land. So, I mean, when I do anything, it's for the purposes of understanding other people and their energy. And if I could tap into their vibration, then I can heal them better from their level. Whether it's higher than mine or lower than mine, I can just tap right on into it and heal the sad and hurt and heartache. And I always ask God before I do any of this, but it's been a long time since I've done anything other than just the occasional bit of weed. Normal. And like here, I just get the normal strains. I don't get anything fancy, just $5 weed that everyone has on them, I don't go out of my way to do anything beyond that anymore. Once a year, I try to drop acid, though. Try to get more insights and see what's going on. And this year, I have no idea. I have no idea if I'm going to do it. I did it last October. October's rolling around again. I'm all, maybe. I remember last time I was thinking, well, I took 2 tabs. I wanted to have a really good experience. And I remember thinking it's going to take about an hour and a half to come on. So I'm just going to kick it, hang out with my friend that did it with me. He only took half a tab. And 10 minutes later, I was flying, and I left my body and I went to I think the 12th dimension. And I just talked to the creators of this world, and I talked to the people who created color. Just really, really trippy. I could tell what the ducks were thinking. I could see the fabric of space-time behind the trees and the lake and the river and the rocks, and I could see the matrix behind. I could see how the world was created. It was pretty insightful, and I was able to control my energy in a way that affected the people around me. There was a security guard coming towards me, and I saw what he had in his mind, and I stopped him in his tracks. I made him confused, and I watched him walk away. And I'd never felt that kind of empowerment before with my own energy field, and claiming before God my sovereign right to be and exist, and not having to ask permission to exist, but rather just to exist as me in this moment in the way that I wanted to, with complete and total freedom. So I did. And it was an incredible experience. But now I'm it was pretty strong. It was pretty strong. And now I think maybe I might, maybe I won't. I don't really know. And I do have some San Pedro, and I've been thinking maybe I'm going to do a ceremony with San Pedro. San Pedro is mescaline, and it's a South American. It's completely legal. It's a South American mushroom that grows on a cactus. It's kind of like peyote. It's a little different strain, I believe. And last time I took it, it just gave me emotional comfort and love, and the energy. It was a pretty incredible experience. I'll have to do a show on it. But this plant it's very sacred, and it just kind of helps you get insights, and it's emotional. There's no visuals. It's not a hallucinatory thing. I think it can be, but generally speaking, it's just, it kind of put me in a weird, I was in a weird headspace, and it put me in a weird sort of energy of attracting knowledge and wisdom that I needed from other people. So when I took that, it lined me right up. And it was very, very bizarre. I'll have to tell you guys about someday. But so, I don't know. So I just kind of look at all the ways that you can alter your experience and your perception and crack open the head, as the shamans say, to get a glimpse of what's beyond the veil, beyond this dimension, beyond this timeline. And you can see it through, just through meditating. You don't ever have to do substances. You don't have to do drugs. You don't have to do anything. Quite honestly, if you just meditate, you'll get there as well. Opening all your chakras, opening the 12th chakra, man. Today, I woke up this morning and I was just feeling this intense, energy still from the 12th chakra opening. And it's like doing some really psychoactive weed. It's maybe like being on a mild form of LSD. And I think opening the 12th chakra might actually unlock the locks in your brain that are open to LSD, lysergic acid. I feel like it does bring more psychoactive and psychotropic substances to almost a state of livingness inside of your head and brain. So the more you meditate, the more you work on yourself, and the more you're willing to accept who you are on every level, the more you're going to have these experiences anyway. Supernatural, paranormal occurrences, and you're going to have more interesting, more interesting experiences for sure. Seriously, when I started opening, I think it was like the 11th, actually 8th, 9th, 10th chakras is when I started seeing more fairies flying around in my room. I started seeing more beings. I started seeing ghost cats and shadow people, and I'm able to see the 9th dimensional Arcturians when they come in their ships. And I've taken pictures, and I don't know if I had been so vibrating so high, if I've been able to see them or even take a picture of them. I don't know if the camera would have taken the picture if someone else had been holding it. I don't know. I've gotten a lot of pictures of their ships now. And it's so hard to see. They're so subtle. But I wonder if I'm not affecting the outcome of the camera because of my vibration, or if they were always there to see. I'm not sure. Now, I did see a picture on my Google Chromecast of a sky, and I was like, oh, that was a weird line in the sky. And then all of a sudden I saw an Arcturian ship in the picture, and I'm like, okay, so I'm not the only one taking pictures of these. I don't know if this person noticed it, probably didn't. It's so subtle and it's so high vibrational. It's like if you don't know to look for it, you're never going to see it. But once you train the eye, then you're always going to see it. If you ever see a slight color variation and then it looks like there's a line in the sky, look for the rectangular shape. And inside the rectangular shape, look for a traditional shaped ET head. And usually they're smiling and they're looking at you with their big eyes. And they're blue beings, but they just but it looks like they're made from clouds, is what it looks like. Okay, I know I sound like I'm crazy right now, but if you see what I mean, if you ever see what I mean, and it's in my Twitter feed, it's in my Instagram feed, Mermaid Girl 888 is the name of those. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. But until you see it, you're just going to think I'm crazy. But once you see it, you're going to go, oh my God, it's there in plain sight, hidden in plain sight, 100%. It's just there. It's just hardly there. And the same thing with the fairies and the faces and the rocks and in trees and in water and in the sky and in the clouds and in the flowers. I see faces and beings everywhere now. And I think that's because I cracked open the head. I did that. I did the work, and I did psychedelics, and I also did just normal meditation and spiritual growth. So it's not required to do drugs, and I don't recommend it. In fact, it's pretty scary for a lot of people. So I'm not recommending it. I don't condone it. But for me, I wanted to be a explorer of the supernatural worlds, and then the things unseen and the sights and thoughts beyond, so that I could bring the knowledge to not only myself and people in my close vicinity, but also to you guys as well. So anyway, but stop vaping. Oh my God, I can't believe the vaping situation. It's just so sad. It was so fun while it lasted too, for real. And anyway, I've been more and more interested lately in this Nichiren Buddhism thing. I'm like, because my new friend has sent me a really good donation, and I wanted to thank her on the air. Prague, thank you, Pragati. I am so grateful for you and for the donation. It's super helpful to keep my work on the air and keep me going. I'm grateful for any and all donations, for sure. Helps me and my kid eat, actually. But yeah, Pragati had stopped going to the Nichiren Buddhist, what her husband had called a cult, and I kind of thought it was a cult too, even though it has good results. So I'm thinking about doing a little bit more research. If I come up with enough information, I am thinking that I'm going to do a whole show on this on Sunday, and I'm going to go to the organizational website and tell you what they have to say. And people have had wonderful results with chanting these words. It's a high vibrational chant, and it was created in the 13th century. So it's not like just in the past, 30, 40 years, they decided to make up something and then make money off of it. It's actually a real thing, but they've made it into this like wildly popular and successful, albeit a little bit crazy and I don't know, organization. And it's like, I think the person behind the organization is all right, but I think a lot of the people have become extraordinarily fanatical and forcing it on others. And that's where I felt like it was a cult. And my son and I were talking about it today. And as I played the chant today and I started chanting, I thought, well, I'm going to see what it can do for me. And if I still get the energy from it that I did before. And it didn't really take away my anxiety, but it gave me almost like a determined sense of focus and purpose. And that was after listening to it for 15 minutes. So it kind of brings in an energy of bravery to it. And I don't know if it's the energy that I personally needed at that moment today, or if it's something that it always carries. So I wanted to do a little bit more research. If I can on Sunday, I'm going to do a show on this. I think that it could be helpful and interesting, and you guys might want to try it, just to try it, like I tell you to try the Ho'oponopono or the Ki Asha. I don't recommend or condoning joining any cult or anything. Obviously, I do not condone that. But I'm going to tell you guys a little bit more about my experience with it, my very limited experience with that organization. But I feel like sometimes we shoot down the message when we shoot down the messenger. Sometimes the messenger has a great message, but the messenger is not to be trusted, right? Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh comes to mind. I loved his books. I found his stuff insightful when they were authored by a man called Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh. But he had to hightail it the hell out of Oregon in the United States and go back to India and rename himself Osho, O-S-H-O, and that was like a big fiasco. And for the most part, a lot of what he taught was right on the money. And a lot of stuff they taught was right on the weirdness scale. Very high up on the weirdness scale. And I can't remember what is the name of the documentary. there's a several part documentary that I watched on Netflix about the Osho phenomenon, the Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh phenomenon. And the guy himself, he was a narcissist. He was a spiritual narcissist, which is the most dangerous and damaging narcissist that a person can be. You know, he put his own needs above everyone else's. And in the end, when it looks like push comes to shove, he just took off, hightailed it out of there, and left the government to fight the people on this commune that they had created in Oregon. And it was like this massive, massive thing. It was just like, oh my God. He became a billionaire. People gave up all of their money and all of their lives and all of their property. They gave everything to him. Spiritual narcissism, like Jim Jones was also. And David Koresh, he's another example of that. So I don't believe in fanaticism or extremes for any religion or any lifestyle or anything. I just feel like being, you know, moderation, you know, is the key. Like just having, all right, you know, hey, I'm going to try this one thing now. Cool. Like there's nothing wrong with chanting something that makes you feel good, but doing it in a group of hundreds of thousands of people and forsaking your family and friends, that's kind of where I draw the line, right? You know, so spiritual discernment is always super, super, it's imperative. It's imperative, especially in this world, in this day and age. You know, like listen to channelings from ETs, but if they start telling you stuff that isn't right, you don't have to believe them. Use your discernment, discretion. You know, it's super important. Anyway, I'm going to talk about a few other things before we get to tonight's topic. DisclosureNews.it, they only had one report for today. In the evening report, the 1700 hour UTC time, they say, even today, the moderate period of activity from midnight to 11, the maximum peak was 26 hertz frequency at 8 UTC time. So there you have it. Now, okay, HeartMath today, this chart just blew my mind today, and I'm going to tell you why in a moment. See if you all see a little pattern, okay? All right. California started off at midnight today at 87 hertz frequency, and they remained at 87 hertz frequency at 4 a.m. And they just, let's see, it only went down to 86 at 1 a.m., so pretty much the same all the way across the board. Wavered one little point for a little bit. That was it. Now, in Hofuf, Saudi Arabia, they started off at 9. That's so low. Compared to the numbers we've been seeing, that's super low. 9 hertz frequency in Hofuf, Saudi Arabia at midnight. And 4 a.m., they were at 0. Big fat goose egg. Now, Lithuania, they started off at 122 hertz frequency at midnight on the Schumann resonance scale, and they went to 113 by 4 a.m. So they just went down a little bit. Alberta, Canada, which has always been extremely high, they were only at 47 hertz frequency at midnight. And at 4 a.m., they were at 0. Big fat goose egg in Alberta, Canada, too. 0 hertz frequency at 4 a.m. Weird, right? Totally weird. In Northland, New Zealand, they started off at 64 hertz frequency on the Schumann resonance scale at midnight, and by 4 a.m. they were at 62 hertz frequency. Now, Hulului, South Africa, started off at 15. Again, extremely low value for what this is. 15 hertz frequency on the Schumann resonance scale in Hulului, South Africa at midnight, but by 4 a.m., again at 0. A big fat goose egg for 3 places. Hofuf, Saudi Arabia, Hulului, South Africa, and Alberta, Canada. Totally weird, right? I can't really tell you what it means. I can't speak to what this is scientific evidence of exactly. I just know that the magnetosphere's got this massive crack in it, and we're getting some weird values. The frequencies are very, very strange. But I'm just going to trust that all is in perfect and divine order, like everything is. It is what it is. Very bizarre, though, right? All right, we are in A Course in Miracles. The thought of today is from Lesson 109. You can check this out in the Foundation of Inner Peace website, acim.org, or just go download an app of your choice. There's many, many free apps about, surrounding these lessons. And I highly recommend taking the lessons, or at least reading through them all the way through, because it's going to bring you a source of comfort and sanity in an insane world. All right, but today, the lesson is, I rest in God. I rest in God. We ask for rest today and quietness unshaken by the world's appearances. We ask for peace and stillness in the midst of the turmoil born of clashing dreams. We ask for safety and for happiness, although we seem to look on danger and on sorrow. And we have the thought that will answer our asking with what we request. I rest in God. This thought will bring you to rest in quiet, peace and stillness, safety and happiness that you seek. I rest in God. This thought has power to wake the sleeping truth in you, whose vision sees beyond appearances to that same truth in everyone and everything there is. Here is the end of suffering for all the world and everyone who ever came and yet will come to linger for a while. Here is the thought in which the Son of God is born again to recognize himself. I rest in God. And that was taken from Lesson 109. The lesson itself is much, much longer with beautiful thoughts throughout, in the event that you are so inclined to read it. All right, I'm going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I'm going to talk about why it is necessary to grieve when you suffer a blow, a big grief and loss blow in any area of your life, not just the death of a loved one. And I'm going to talk about what does it mean on a deeper level. I mean, I think I already went through, I know I had an episode about this already, but I think I went through what the stages are, and I'll briefly cover them today. But why is it important to grieve, and why is it important for us to recognize the impact it's had on our lives? Because I know that a lot of people are leaving the planet right now. I just feel like it's important to address it again today. Divine guidance said that it's something we should go over. So we're going to do that right after this message. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's high time you did. It is the absolute easiest way to make a podcast. First of all, it's absolutely free. Second of all, they have creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. You guys have known that I've been doing this for 8 months using the Anchor.fm app right on my cell phone, and I have done it everywhere, right? I have recorded this in my living room, my bedroom, little cafes in Quito, Ecuador, all over Cuenca. It's so absolutely easy to make your podcast, and editing is just a snap. Anchor also will distribute your podcast for you, and it took me about 2.5 months to become syndicated, and now I'm available on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more, and so can you. You can make money from your podcast also, and there's no minimum requirement. You get paid from your very first listener. It is everything that you need to make a podcast all in one place. So please, if you are interested in making a podcast of your very own, do not hesitate to start with Anchor. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today. Metaphysical Soul Speak is run on sponsors and listener support. This means listeners like you. If you are so inclined to support my efforts and my little podcast, please visit me at anchor.fm/metaphysical and pledge an amount of your choosing today. Thank you. All right, guys, I am connected with Mother Mary, the mother of Jesus, and she wanted to speak a little bit about why it's important to feel the loss and allow yourself to suffer grief. I think that her example is famous throughout the whole world, whether you're Christian or Catholic or whatever faith. Everybody knows the story. Even if you're an atheist, you know the story that Jesus was crucified on a cross. He was bullied and beaten and abused and then put on a cross to die. And whether or not you believe he rose again 3 days later or not, just the idea that a mother could watch this horrible brutality happen to her son publicly, you know, in front of everybody at the time. And the fact that this is one of the most famous stories in our history, like over 2,000 years later. You know, that really speaks, you know, it really does. And so I'm going to channel a little bit Mother Mary's message concerning this topic, because it's very important. Even if you go through something that horrible, and God forbid, I hope that nobody ever has to witness that, period. But she did. And even though she was a very high spiritual, vibrational being, it still hurt her heart. It still was a very hard thing, obviously, for her to go through. So I'm going to go ahead and take a deep breath and get a little bit more connected to Mother Mary and see what are her thoughts on going through such a deep and powerful grief and loss. What was that like for her? I mean, obviously she's restored. She's in heaven, and she's a spiritually ascended master. And so is Brother Yeshua, her son, who played the role of her son in that life. And, you know, they're dear friends with each other now. I think in a way she'll always consider him her son. So anyway, I'm going to take a couple breaths and see what Mother Mary has to say about this. Mother Mary, please tell us what it was like for you to suffer that kind of grief, and what did you do to get through your days following that which happened to your son in front of you? And if it didn't actually happen, we want to know that too. Okay, she says, oh, it did happen. It actually is a horrible and tragic part of human history. The fact that this happened at all to any man, period. And even some women were crucified, and yet that wasn't ever in the history books. But it was horrible that it happened to my son and anyone who suffered that. It's a loss and a grief, but also such a deep trauma and brutality that if you were there to witness it back in those days, you still have it as a part of your soul now, and it becomes a part of your psyche. Anyone who witnessed the brutality of the Roman soldiers of that day, it's almost like a collective trauma that everybody suffers, even still, many lifetimes later. This is something that we have carried with us, and it is a deep, deep wound, not only on humanity in general, but on those that were present. So this is a good topic. This is a good topic because we need to learn to let go, and we need to forgive. We need to forgive all of the events of those days, and we need to forgive the suffering that we all went through at that time. And okay, she's saying this to me directly. She says, I know that you were not there, and so you did not witness this, and you didn't know that it had happened until you had passed away in that life, because you were our cousin at that time. And I have thanked God many times that you did not have to see that you did not have to witness what I had to. It was a very deep loss for our family, just on a family level. And it was a very deep loss for the greater human family, those that loved Yeshua, my son, those who loved him. So this has been an ongoing, almost like an open wound, if not a festering wound in humanity. And it's a loss and a grief that we just almost have not been able to allow ourselves to feel deeply in order to heal from it. This is why Christians have taken the cross as a symbol for their religious faith, because they just can't rectify in their minds and their souls that such a brutality happened to one of the sweetest, most beloved, perfect souls that ever walked planet Earth. You have often, and she's directing this to me directly, guys. She says, you have often questioned the use of such a brutal symbol in a faith that is meant to follow in the footsteps of such a great and peaceful man. And you've often asked, why not use a dove as a symbol for him? How come Christians don't wear a dove necklace? And you never understood it. And I'm telling you, it's not because they have the faith in Jesus and they love what he did. It's because they're literally still carrying the shame and the guilt of what happened to him. Even if they weren't there, they could not have stopped it. If they had been there, it was something that had been previously planned. He had agreed to it, even though it was very hard to go through it at the time. He needed to make a point and a statement. But that statement wasn't really heard or understood by all. The statement, of course, being that we don't die, we never die. We have complete control over life and death when we are ascended in our spiritual bodies, and we are connected to God in a deep, profound way. He was just showing, he was a way shower. He was trying to show us all where we could be and what we could be doing. And now that we are, as a whole of humanity, ascending and in the fifth dimension, and all of you are going to be capable of the very same miracles, if not more and different and more varied miracles that my son showed you over 2,000 years ago as a shining example of what a person can become. But to get back to the question of how hard this was on me as a mother, this was an incredible grief that I can still feel how deep and powerful it was as an impact on my life. And to be honest, it almost killed me. It almost broke me. I was grateful that I had my faith in divine. I walked with that faith and carried it through. It did not help me to, it helped me to have the faith, but it did not cause me to lose my faith or stop believing in God. A lot of people that go through a major loss will get to the point where they are angry with divine and somehow blame divine for a brutal death. And you mustn't do that if you suffer something this deep. Your connection with the divine must always remain intact, because we have human will on the planet Earth, and when you have human will, things are going to happen. Sometimes people use their will for evil. Sometimes people use their will to suffer at the hands of evil. And a lot of times these drama plays are carried out in almost a script form before you're born. And it was no different with my son, Jesus, Yeshua, as I knew him. Even though I knew it and I was consciously aware of it, I was made consciously aware of it before it happened, that it was going to happen. It was still extremely hard for me to witness and be a part of it. This passion play, as they call it. But you have to understand that beyond the brutality and the physicalness of it, we are divine souls, and we are 100% in the light. We are of the light. And I kept this knowledge and faith with me as I walked my days following his brutal murder, his death. And when he rose again, of course, it was a joyous occasion. And he came to me, and I held my son in my arms once again. And this isn't something that occurs in every case. I am understanding and aware of that. But after he had to leave, he went to another land, and when he left, I suffered, I guess what you could say, a secondary loss, because now I couldn't be with my son, even though I knew he was alive and everything was fine. And I still carried the grief of what had happened to him. And that was my personal cross to bear, so to speak. I was able to carry this energy of the loss, and eventually I was able to transform it, but I sat with it and felt it on a deep level. And I just, to get through it, I asked God every day. I prayed and asked God to shine his glorious light on the sadness and the hurt and the heartache that I suffered, because as a mother, you never want your child to be harmed. And imagine what I went through and how it was beyond a disaster as far as the emotional devastation that it caused. And even though we knew he was all right, and it didn't take long to know he was all right, the memory of what we had witnessed it became a part of us, like our very skin, or the way our hair attached to our scalp. It was just a part of us now. The way that if you get a burn from cooking, that scar stays with you forever. And this deep loss and brutality and the post-traumatic stress disorder, even though that wasn't a phrase that we knew back then, that's what it was. And it's something that scarred all of humanity's psyche, and to this day, it's still a very deep wound. I believe this is why there are so many wars fought in the name of religion, and religious people that are fanatical tend to be against each other. Not only because of what happened to my son, but for various reasons and different martyrs throughout centuries of earth war and the polarity of good versus evil and us versus them and you versus me. But I allowed myself to sit with the grief. I allowed myself to feel it because I knew it was important to get through it. I knew it was important to bring myself back to a state of conscious awareness and oneness with divine. Everything in our lives is a test. Whether it's stubbing your toe or not having money to pay your bills, or suffering the loss of your home, your items, your possessions and things, or the people in your life when they pass away, no matter how they pass away. We all suffer losses, and everything is a test that pulls you away from thinking about and communing with the divine. So I knew this. I was lucky that I had this inner knowledge and the wisdom and insight to always stay focused, remaining my mind and my heart, allowing myself to rest in God. And as such, I spent every morning in the sunshine, feeling the warmth of the sun on my skin. Those first 3 days were the worst. And it's always that way. The first 3 days are always the worst in any kind of loss. So I sat and I listened to the birds singing. And I imagined the breeze on my face as the birds took wing and flew away. And I did feel the breeze on my skin. And I focused on the mundane things that became, in those moments, those quiet, early morning moments, they became extraordinary things. And they helped me through the loss. Just to focus, being mindful of the wind, the blueness of the sky, the breeze on my face, the way that my hair would rumple and crumple when the wind got stronger, the way that my skin would smell after being in the sun for a few minutes. There's a scent that changed in my skin, and that's as the melanin increases in the skin, because your skin starts to get tan and baked in the sun. And I started to notice things like that, the little things. I noticed that different fabrics in my robes would absorb the heat from the sun if they were darker. I started to notice things like that. And that helped me through the grief, because it would pull me out of the pain, the absolute abject pain that I felt. And then later, as I went about my days, Miriam, my cousin, would sing with me, and we would wash our laundry together. We would beat our clothes against the rocks together, and sometimes we would bathe in the water. And the coolness of the water, many of the things that we took for granted before, every moment became powerful, meaningful. And we knew that the fact that we still had our lives, because they very well might have taken us as well. It was so much worse than what the history books say. It was so dangerous in those times. We were always afraid of our lives being lost at the hands of the Roman soldiers. No one has ever really thought to include the mother's stories when the sons were murdered. It's not in the history books. This wasn't, the facts of what happened were covered, but not of how did we heal from it. When my cousin's son, they cut off his head, John the Baptist was also murdered brutally by Salome. And when this happened, it became the same for her. She was very much living in the moment, moment to moment, just getting through every moment and remembering to breathe, remembering to breathe, remembering to take that next breath, take that next step, get the pebbles out of our sandals, brush the dirt off of our robes, comb our hair after a big wind. Just the daily things, the mundane things became so super important. Just to do the mundane things, remembering to eat, remembering to thrash the wheat and make the bread and do it on time, and to feed those in the village that were of need. To get outside of our own head and to be of service to others, to get outside of our own pain and grief and lives for a moment, because it got to be too much to bear to focus on it 100%. But we knew it was important to get through it. So that's how we did it. That is what our experience was. We held each other in each other's arms and cried, sometimes very, very late into the wee hours of the night. Sometimes we cried out and screamed as loud as we could into the wind in the middle of the desert. Sometimes we walked in silence, hand in hand or arm in arm, sometimes single file. Sometimes we just sat quietly and watched the shadows that the sun made across the desert, and the shadows that were cast by the various little plants that we witnessed there. But every day we got better, just a little bit. And we accepted that. We welcomed the change of that. And every day we got a little stronger. We accepted that. We welcomed that. And every day our pain became less and less. And our love for our sons grew and grew. And our knowledge of what they had done and why they had done it and what the impact of the world would be, our knowledge grew. Our pride in our sons, in their abilities to go through with what they had planned, our knowledge of that grew. And our pride grew. And we were humbled by their sacrifice, that they came and chose that to show humanity a different way. We know that they altered the course of history, many different histories, many different timelines. We are proud of them, but also humbled by their actions and what they had picked for themselves. But we did acknowledge always that it was important to feel the loss that we had suffered. And that's how we got over it, though. We spent time on ourselves every day. We spent time with each other every day. We spent time in service to yet others together. And we spent a lot of time in nature, and we spent a lot of time sitting and feeling the divine presence near us, in us, and around us. And we became, in those moments, timeless. And our timelessness carried us through. We realized we would see our sons again. We would be with our sons again. And us too, we would also perish. Our bodies would cease, and we would continue. And having this knowledge with a greater, grander perspective, which isn't necessarily religious, it's just to have a divine sense and a keen knowledge of the true spirituality and the way of how this dimensional plane worked, that kept us sane, that helped us keep our sanity in these hours. We never really got over the loss and deaths of our son, even though I knew my son had risen again and he had left. And the fact that he had left and I knew I might not ever see him again, it was very hard. And in the loss, we became one with it. We knew that it had happened. We never denied it. We were aware of it. And like I said, it became a scar, or a piece of us. It was a part of us. But when it finally came time for the acceptance, that's when the true healing began. And that is why it's important to always keep on it when you are in that way of grief. To deny yourself the experience is to deny yourself a harder part of being human. It's to deny yourself what it's like to lose a part of yourself. And it's to deny yourself the greatest joy of finding that self, that part of yourself, and gathering it back into your soul once more and becoming whole again. To have suffered a loss is to later become one of your greatest joys when you regain that which you have lost. It's important as the human experience to sometimes go through the harder things so that you can have a deeper and greater spiritual understanding of these things later. And at least for me, that is why I believe that it is important to allow yourself to grieve. With the God in me, I bow to the God in you. I bless you and I bless you and I bless you. I offer you my peace and my love and my friendship to all of humanity forevermore. Amen. Thank you, Mother Mary. Thank you for your deep and profound insight. I appreciate that. She says, it's been my pleasure. She's also saying that you guys can call upon her, whether you're religious or not, it doesn't matter to her. She's here for all of humanity. So she'll be here. If you are suffering from a loss or anything, she's here, and she will put her loving arms around you And she's been here for me many times, and she's comforted me many times. I felt her loving energy with me. And I'm glad she was here today. It was a very good message, right? So I was faced today with a friend of mine from another country. He has a different set of rules and circumstances by which he lives his life. He is from the Middle East. Well, not really Middle East, North Africa. Oh goodness, I think he's from Tunisia. Either Algeria or Tunisia, and they're right next door to each other. Now I can't remember. I think he might be from Algeria. Anyway, and he's Muslim. And he and I were talking. We hadn't talked since August, and so he was saying, it's been about 6 weeks since we talked. And he asked me how I am, and I said, well, I've suffered a really big loss with my girlfriend, who had been my friend for over 30 years. And she passed away just a few weeks ago, and I just found out a couple weeks ago, and I'm really suffering from the grief of that still. I'm going through the grief process still. And his immediate reaction was, well, you need to go talk to little kids. You need to talk to people in your neighborhood. You need to talk to elderly people. You need to pet cats and dogs, and you need to paint and write her a letter and do this and do that. And I was like, no, I don't need to do those things. And I started realizing that is a reaction for a lot of people. You know, they want to just sweep it under the rug. It'll go away. You'll feel better. You'll be okay. Just, you don't got to feel the loss. You don't got to. Yes, you do. And this is why. Besides the fact that it is your part of your human experience to feel these things and go through the harder parts, you have to allow yourself to feel the sadness. Right? At first there's denial. When my friend first told me that she had a lung removed last year because of lung cancer, I was in denial. Like, what? Like, how? Why didn't you ask me for a freaking cure for cancer? Like, you don't think that I haven't been researching this for decades already, and that maybe I might have had something before you had surgery, But she didn't even tell me. She didn't tell anybody. She went and just got the surgery. And once you have lung cancer and you've had the surgery, they say that you have about a year left to live, because usually you're either going to die from a lack of oxygen or you're going to die from cancer. If it got that bad, you had to have a whole lung removed. That's like pretty much a death sentence. And she knew it. She told me. So at first I denied it. And I denied it in a way I didn't want to talk to her about it. And I didn't. I just told her I loved her. I told her to stay positive. And we just talked about politics, which, is our, we are always complaining about the president, and we just talked about other things and sent each other petitions and talked about the habitat losses and bee losses and bird losses and animal endangerment and extinction. We're always sending each other stuff about, we were social activists together, political activists together, and so I was denying, but first, DABDA, when you go through a loss, you suffer first denial, then anger, then bargaining. Well, what if we do this? Maybe that will change it. Maybe, and then you just kind of, okay, God, well, what if I do this? Will you save my friend's life? You go through bargaining, anger, you're angry because you can't do anything about it. In the end, you can't do anything. We all die in the end, right? Nobody's ever gotten out of this planet alive. Maybe Jesus ascended in the end, but he did die, didn't he? So no one gets out of the planet alive. And so, but you bargain for a while, and then you fall into a depression. And I think I'm in the depression stage of this grief right now. I'm sad. I'm very, very sad. I can't ask my friend anything anymore. I can't just call her and hear her voice and her laugh and her silly phrases and sayings that just influenced me in oh so many ways for 30 years. And she had Heyoka crazy wisdom like I do. So, and her very, very cosmic, very Native American, very astrological ways of looking at the world, and her complete and total trust in the universe, and how she was in awe of my complete and total trust in the universe, which seemed to be an even greater faith than hers to her. But to me, it didn't seem that way. But, it just all those things. And I just like all the things that I learned from her and she was like my mother. She was the second mother, or in my case, a fourth mother. I had 6 parents plus Amber. But, and I accept that she's gone, but I'm still suffering the depression. And when you go through these kinds of things, they don't always go in order. And sometimes you'll feel anger, and then you get over that, then you accept, then you go back to anger later. You might be depressed, and then you might go through bargaining again. And then you might even go through denial and just imagine maybe it's true, maybe it's not true. It's a lie, it was a rumor. They lied to me, and the person's still alive, Or your subconscious mind, you have dreams that they faked their own death. Ooh, like Elvis. We all know Elvis is still alive, and he always will be. Denial. It's not just a river in Egypt. But when my friend was telling me, oh, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to do that, you got to keep yourself busy, and I kind of got a little upset. I'm like, no, I need to feel the loss. I need to feel it. Because if you suffer something so deep and profound, such a deep grief and a loss, whether it's like your house catching on fire and you losing everything, that's a deep grief. That's a deep loss. Losing everything that was in your storage, that for me that was. Losing my husband when he died of brain cancer. My friend Amber, she ended up dying of brain cancer. It metastasized. Her lung cancer metastasized. My husband's skin cancer metastasized and became brain cancer. There's a lot of people with brain cancer. It's crazy. Literally, they go crazy and then they die. And 2 of the most intelligent people I ever knew. And that's how they went out. It's like, what the flock, man? But no matter what kind of a loss, losing your job is a loss. Your car being stolen is a loss. It's not just when someone dies or, every kind of a loss is a loss. A divorce is a loss, right? So it's important to grieve the loss. It's important to get into the feeling of it. And it's important to do it in small doses. Don't just sit and feel it only. And if you need to talk, there's always the ability to talk to me. You can always find someone to talk to you about it, or a grief counselor or someone online. There's apps, there's everything, right? But it's important to get the energy of it out, because otherwise you'll take it into your own body. And if you deny it and you just stay stuck in the stage of denial and you don't allow yourself to feel the loss, you can actually cause cancer in yourself. If you're stuck in depression, get help. Get medicine, smoke weed. Not vape, don't vape it. But it's important to feel grief as it happens. What if you want to get into Yale and they deny you? That's a loss. That's even something like that. It's not the end of the world. You're going to live. But at the same time, that's still like a loss. What if you break your leg and you're in a wheelchair for 6 months? That happened to me. That was a grief. That was like a deep loss. And now I don't walk completely 100%. You can't really tell when I walk, but after a couple hours of walking, now I start to limp. And then I become, I get engrossed and embroiled in a lot of pain. because of the metal rods in my legs that hold my foot on to my leg. That was a big grief. That was a big loss for me. That was something that it took me a long time to get over that happened to me. And there's still sometimes I go into denial, even still. That was in 2014, and I'm still like, I can't believe that freaking happened to me. You know, there's like grief and loss on many different levels, but you have to allow yourself to feel it. And the thing is, you can't just ever go back to who you were before this thing happened. You know, I was reading an article in everydayfeminism.com, and this lady, let me see if I can find her name. Let's see, I think it's at the bottom here of the article. Oh, didn't. Yes, Sarah Alcid is a contributing writer, and she's a young feminist living in Washington, D.C. She's a reproductive health and justice advocate. Pretty cool. Sarah Alcid, that's spelled A-L-C-I-D, if you want to go look at her stuff. And that's her Twitter is Sarah Alcid. I think it's S-A-R-A. Hold on. Yes, S-A-R-A. So she went through the loss of her own mother, and she wrote about it. It had been 3 years by the time she wrote this article. And she says, you will never get over it, and you're not supposed to. And a lot of people are really terrible at helping, you know. They'll say all the wrong things, like my friend, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do art, you need to write a letter, you need to talk to your friend, No, I don't. I need to sit with my grief. I need to experience it. I need to feel it. And I need to get through it. I don't need to deny that it happened, and I don't need to take my mind off of it, and I don't need to pull myself away from it, because that just prolongs the inevitable of still feeling sad about it, right? And at the worst part of it, that can actually give you cancer for holding on to such a deep, deep, deep and profound loss and never experiencing the grieving part, the crying, the screaming, the anger, the bargaining, the depression. You'll never get to acceptance if you don't do the dabbed part of the dabda, and you have to be okay with the fact that you're not going to be okay for a while. But you have to be okay with that. You have to give yourself space, and you have to give yourself grace when you suffer a loss. Allow yourself the space to feel it and to heal from it. You're never going to be 100% okay, especially if it's a loss of a child or a parent or a dear, dear friend that's like a part of your family. There was a point for many years in which my friend Amber, she was like as important to me as my own lungs, She was like a second limb, a third limb, whatever. She was literally a part of me. Like I didn't want to make a move on any given day of the week without having at least one phone call, one conversation, 1 hour with her, and I spent almost every day with her for many, many years. Every damn day for like 2 years or something, maybe 2 or 3 years. And the days that we weren't together, she always called me in the morning to tell me good morning. She called me at night to say good night, or I called her, she became like literally like a part of me, like my mom. When my kids were born, those were her grandkids. Even though she was just my friend, she wasn't like legally their grandparents or genetically or whatever. But she became like my, she was another grandmother for the kids. So to have a loss like that, I can't just deny it and go, like my friend saying, going to talk to children. Why would I talk to random people in the neighborhood and tell them about what happened to me? That I lost my friend. And like, that's like I'm such an introvert. It's such a deeply personal thing that I could not just go do that. And I don't need to unburden myself or my sorrows on strangers. It's so random that he would say that to me, but he's assuming that I have a bunch of friends in the neighborhood. And it's like, I can't even express how deep this loss is for me. Barely express it in English, let alone in Spanish. So I'm not going to do that. I don't need to do that. I'm just sitting with the pain, and I'm crying when I'm crying, and I'm sad when I'm sad, and I'm remembering the happy and the funny memories and laughing at a lot of the good memories and the funny memories. I'm allowing myself to sit with it. But it's important to feel the grief. So Sarah has to say, she says she was so closed off from the sadness surrounding the death of her mother because the task of getting over it seemed overwhelmingly impossible. You never get over it, but when you first start the grieving process, you think, oh God, maybe a week I'll be better. Like you kind of start setting these unrealistic, crazy ass goals, in a month I'll get over it. And it's like you have someone that's a part of your life for almost all your life. More with them than without them. More years you've known them than not. You're not going to ever get over it. You're just going to have to accept it in time. And it takes a lot of time. So what she says is there is no end point or end goal in grieving, Everything that you experience after the death of your loved one will be through the lens of that loss. That's what she said. And she says it seems like an inherently depressing suggestion, but it doesn't have to be. Sometimes it is. And she, she said that if you accept and even embrace that, you're just never going to get over it. And that there's no end point to grieving. It actually takes a whole lot of pressure off of you, because now you don't have a goal that you have to achieve or reach, and you don't have to beat yourself up for not achieving or reaching a goal that's impossible. You just realize, okay, life is harsh, and we just have to accept that life is harsh. Things happen. Shit happens every day. Shift happens. First time I heard that was when Amber said shift happens to me. Then I thought that was the most hilarious thing ever. I made it my email when email was brand new. And a couple years later, it was on a huge billboard in San Francisco. Shift happens. You just have to realize a shift happens. Life changes. One of my most intelligent professors I ever had in university was at the University of North Dakota, and he taught a class called East and West in Religion. And he was from China and lived in North Dakota. Quite a different world he moved to. I would sit with him for an hour every day after class. Some weeks I would do this every day, and we just talk about Chinese philosophy and the Tao Te Ching and Buddhism and different concepts that were new to me. And I was just completely in my passion. Like, I love anything to do with how we meet divine in everyday life. It's been my passion my whole life. Whether it's religion or spirituality or going against all of that entirely and becoming an atheist, like all of it's very, very interesting to me. And by the way, actually, I heard from Krista today. She is a hospice nurse and a Reiki practitioner and a chakra healer. And she told me that in hospice, when the atheists are facing their own mortality and know they're getting ready to die, they get very quiet and they don't speak for a couple weeks before they die. And on an energetic level, she has been able to psychically see that it's because they're being instructed from the other side that they were wrong. God exists. Heaven exists. They're going to be loved and taken care of when they go. And that brings them a sense of peace and comfort, but it takes a couple weeks. Because I was asking about that yesterday. So I wanted to thank you, Krista, for that. That's super interesting information. I love that. For those of you who don't know, if you are facing a massive, you're going to die and this massive disease is eating away at you and there's nothing that they can do, and you're in your last stages, if you go into a hospice or you have hospice workers living with you, they'll sit with you and you won't have to die alone. You're always, loved and nurtured and taken care of until your very last breath. And hospice is excellent for that. It helps the families after you die. It's like the whole thing it's an awesome, very compassionate, very loving program. And I was trained in compassion action, which Daniel Brinkley's, I have my certification, or had. I don't have the physical piece of paper, but I know I'm somewhere on a database for them. I took all the training and I never did this work. It would have been good for me to do it, but I was pregnant and I found out on the very last day of training, right when I'm getting my hospice pin. In fact, I found out that I was pregnant, and all of a sudden everyone around me started touching my stomach. They're like, it's a girl, it's definitely a girl, you're definitely gonna have a girl. Oh my God, we feel the energy of it. Oh my God, how come we didn't notice it at the beginning of the week? I was surrounded by psychics and healers. It was amazing. The people that are attracted to this kind of work are very spiritual to begin with. So I want to thank you, Krista, for mentioning that, because that was, I wanted to make sure I brought that up to you guys. It's good to know, right? So if you know an atheist, don't worry. At the end, they're going to figure it out. So it's good to know they figure it out before they get to heaven, because if they get there, they might put themselves in hell thinking there's nothing, and now they're just stuck in a limbo. And that would be a really horrible hell to live through, especially when most atheist people, they take it upon themselves to create their own spirituality from themselves, and they end up donating a lot of money or dedicating their life to a cause. A lot of atheists choose that way so that they can have a different lens from which to view the world, and it doesn't make them bad people, it just gives them a different way of looking at things, right? So I've met a lot of atheists, and they all seem to be very intelligent, very compassionate, loving, generous people, giving of themselves and their money and time to charities. So, it's not a bad thing in my opinion anyway. But I personally can't live as an atheist. I believe in God. I love God, and I have that spiritual awareness, but that's my lens from which I chose to come and look at the world. But anyway, so basically, you have to grieve at your own pace. You're never going to get over the loss. You're just going to change the way you view the world, because now you have another lens with which to look at the world, right? So you have to trust yourself and your boundaries, according to Sarah. She says, you will find the right balance in grieving. You'll find what is manageable for you. And you need to tell your support system what you need at the time when you're going through this massive thing. All right? And she even says most people are really bad, like offensively bad about talking about death. It's true. It's like people just didn't know what the hell to tell you, So not everyone has a support system, she mentioned. So go out of your way to find someone to talk to, a grief counselor, if you really, really, really are having a hard time at it. It is so imperative to help yourself get through the loss, through the major shock of it. But there's never going to be an end in sight. You're just going to have to now live with this battle scar because you're on the battleground of being a human. You know, that's what the landscape you chose to be on. So there's a lot of sadness here. You know, there's a lot of surrounding this. I mean, in other worlds, they know. You know, people, oh, I'm going to go. See you later. All right, bye. Boop. Pop out of their body, you know, a couple years later, boop, now they're new baby, not a big deal. It's a celebratory thing. On other planets, it's not the same. But this planet has a lot of things that are unique. You know, to feel like you're without God for a moment. Just to see what it's like not to be you. It's liberating and freeing, but it's also terrible and sad and horrifying at times. But you have to move on while still remembering and honoring your loved one. And even Sarah says you have to find ways to honor them. You can still engage with the love that you had for them, even if they're not there. She says that can be feeling really freaking cathartic. Some ideas that she says is you can write them a letter when you're missing them. For me, I don't need to write mine a letter. I can just talk to her because I'm telepathic, thank you, God. But volunteering for a cause they cared about, voting away they would have, okay, you don't have to be swayed by that, but just doing something that would make you feel close to that person, and that's another way to help yourself through it. 6 ways to allow yourself to grieve, according to cognitivepsychiatry.com, is just accept your emotions, be kind to yourself, surround yourself with supportive people that would allow you the space and the grace to grieve the way you should for yourself. Take care of your physical needs. Do shower, do eat properly, do exercise a little bit, be creative, write art, music, you know, go ahead and just maybe make a piece of art. Maybe make a piece of art for them. You can leave it on their grave or, you know, bury it into the ground. And seek professional help is the 6th one. If your grief is excessive or overwhelming and you're just not getting over it or through it, because there might be deeper issues that this brought up, other PTSD or whatever. So that's why it's necessary to go through the grieving. Do not try to keep pulling yourself out of it. Don't try to, quote, get over it. Oh, it's been a month already? You should be over it by now. No, you shouldn't. Allow yourself the space and the grace to accept what happened, grieve for what happened. If you cry a year from now, that's okay. If you cry 5 years from now, that's okay. But just allow yourself to go through this very human experience. And know that we all go through it. And maybe you can take some comfort in knowing that we've all gone through some form of loss or grief. We're all in the same damn boat together. Anyway, that's all I got to say about that tonight, guys. I love you. I love you with my whole heart. Still looking for Santa Claus stories and ghost stories for upcoming episodes in October and December. Send them to me, metaphysicalsoulspeak@gmail.com or anchor.fm/metaphysical. I love you guys. Thank you for being on this ascension journey and being your true, authentic self. Being you and the best version of you is the only thing you should ever ask of yourself. So that's it. All I got to say about that. Signing off with peace and joy and the high vibes of the holy 5th dimension. Until next time, guys. Peace. Do you ever wish you could look into the next chapter in your book of life and see what's coming next? What does the universe have in store for you? I can help you with that. I will give you a Celtic cross reading, which is 10 cards, or you can ask me 3 questions, and I use 3 cards per question. So that's 9 cards, or I can channel your higher guidance, or maybe God directly for you. Maybe you want to talk to your dear departed Aunt Edna, because maybe you have a few questions and she was the smartest person you knew. If your deceased relatives are available or your ascended masters, I can channel them for you personally. Let me have 1 hour to show you the future in your next chapter of your book of life. Readings are $75, and it takes me an hour to an hour and a half to complete. And for this price, you will also be hooked up to the healing grid around the planet for free, which means yours truly, me, I will be giving you Reiki 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for the rest of your life. All you have to do is let me know. metaphysicalsoulspeak@gmail.com, and we will explore your future together.